Christmas, everybody. Getting ready for a big game week. Of course, if you are just tuning in and watching on YouTube, give this video a like. And throughout the episode, if you hear something we say and you want to comment on it, leave your comments in the comments section. I'm a narcissist, Rob. Did you know that? I'm a narcissist.
They didn't spell it correctly.
They did not spell narcissist correctly. You would be 100% correct, but
it's kind of is that a narcissistic thing to say that, like, yes, I'm a narcissist. Now learn how to spell narcissist?
Yeah, but maybe, but people just want me to shut up and want you to talk. That's all they want.
I talk a lot.
You do. I got to be honest with you. When I talk to people personally, they say, you talk a lot on that podcast. Trav doesn't say much. Well, because I'm here to ask questions and get your insight is what I'm here. I'm here to guide the process, right?
Well, I'll take any guiding I can get. So.
But you're wearing your new headphones tonight.
We're breaking these in. So
yeah, you look good. I got you the red earbuds, so it goes with the Go Big Red thing.
Nice. You got the black Hawkeye.
Yeah, I got the black Hawkeye headphones. You got the red Nebraska headphones. And of course, if you leave a comment, go ahead and take a second to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd very much appreciate it. That'd be a great Christmas gift to us. Is give us a subscription.
And tell us what you think of Travis.
No, don't tell people what they think of me, because I just sit there and my ego goes way down when people start doing that. Way down. I took you to the Drover for the first time. You are now no longer a Drover virgin.
That was good.
Did you have steak and eggs? Because you couldn't. I was surprised you could not eat all your steak.
I was saving the steak. That's going to be like my Monday morning breakfast.
Ooh, so it's still in the fridge, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we had a great meal. It was me, you, and Owen. We were hanging out at the Drover, and the meal was good. The dining experience was shit because...
Well, it wasn't shit.
It was pretty close to it.
Well, we had a bro table next to us.
I didn't know bro tables existed anymore.
I thought this was the kind of thing that died in like 1980s movies. I mean, it was like the three bullies at the bro table.
Take like Wolf of Wall Street and combine it with like 16 Candles and just some weird movie from the 80s.
I'd say like, okay, remember, what was the one? Where's my $2? John Cusack.
Was that, it wasn't Say Anything, was it?
No, it was a comedy.
Huh. Well, John Cusack was in 16 Candles. I'm just trying.
Yeah, that's true. Now it was like the stereotypical three dudes, kind of bullies at the high school, all at one table. And like every fifth word was an F-bomb.
It was amazing to me.
We've been known to drop F-bombs on here. We're just not sitting next to a couple of tables where there's families with young kids the whole time, completely oblivious to the fact that we're F-bombing the hell out of the room in front of like 9-year-olds.
And of course, they were bragging about how much money they made that day. Oh, we made this deal. It was a $30 million deal. I'm like, I don't care. You have, 8 and 9-year-old kids sitting there, and the mom was extremely uncomfortable. I felt sorry for her, actually.
Yeah. These guys, I mean, it was sort of like stupid, drunk, oblivious, like 26-year-old a-hole.
Lack of self-awareness is a good way to put it.
Yeah, there was a lot of self-awareness lacking going on that night. The meal was great, though.
It was.
Drover was so it's kind of like old school Omaha steakhouse.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
Nothing super fancy. You look at the menu and it's like
meat,
steak, grilled salmon, breaded shrimp, hamburger.
Yeah.
That's it. That's like the whole menu right there.
You and Owen
I think they had like a grilled chicken.
You and Owen went with the whiskey ribeye. I went with the New York strip.
Yeah, the ribeye. You can't beat a ribeye.
You can't. You can't. It had good flavor, but my strip was pretty good.
Which I'm usually not a New York strip guy, but I think New York strips do tend to have a lot of good flavor.
Yeah, this is going to be sacrilegious to a lot of steak people. I absolutely kind of like a sirloin. It's. I know it's a cheaper cut of meat, but I'm kind of a sirloin guy.
It depends. If Owen and I were talking about this. If you're a tender guy, you're not a big sirloin guy. If you're a flavor guy, a good sirloin's got solid flavor. It really does.
You know what I should get for Christmas is like a half a cow. That would be good but I don't have the freezer right now.
Yeah, that's the kicker. Well, and I don't have the eaters in the house anymore. I mean, if it's a holiday break or during the summer and my son's home from school, he can crush the beef. But otherwise, and it's like we like to eat it. It's just, boy, it would take us like 2 years to eat half a side of beef.
I do got to say this before we dive into the podcast today, and that is my alma mater, Grandview, won the NAIA National Championship against Kaiser University out of Florida. So the Vikings, national champs, man. National champs.
Which, very cool. So second national championship for Grandview University. First one won by current coach Joe Woodley's father, Joe Woodley Sr.,
yes,
correct?
Yes.
And that was in 2013.
That was in 2013, yes.
So, that was kind of a cool full circle there, which when Joe Woodley Jr. took over, kind of one of the things you and I have talked about on this show, he's never lost a regular season conference game.
6 seasons.
Wait, so regular season or regular season conference?
Regular season game. Period. So
all of his losses
5
have all come in the playoffs.
5 losses, all in the playoffs in 6 years.
Kind of impressive. They're sort of a perennial semifinal finalist there in NAIA football. And when you look at NAIA football, it's interesting when you look at NAIA football and you look at FCS football. NAIA football runs through the state of Iowa.
Yeah.
It's Grandview, it's Morningside, it's Northwestern.
Yeah.
When you look at FCS football, it's either the Big Sky Conference or even more so the Missouri Valley Conference. It's the Dakota schools, it's the Montana schools, rather.
Yeah. So, and North Dakota State is on its way back to the national championship game. It beat South Dakota State yesterday, ending its run of 3 straight national titles. Or was that 2 straight national titles by South Dakota State? Trying to think.
1 straight. Yeah, they won the last one.
I thought they won the last 2.
I'd have to double check.
Yeah,
I know they were the defending national champs. I don't know if they were the 2-time defending, but So North Dakota State's got Montana State in the national finals.
So the college football playoff was a big point of discussion over the weekend. You had a lot of people on Friday night saying that Indiana didn't belong, and then SMU got blown out by Penn State, and they're saying the committee got it all wrong. Truth is, all 4 games were duds. They were duds, with the exception of maybe Texas and Clemson, but Texas was never going to lose that game.
No, and I thought Indiana was one of those games where I think when they went into desperation mode, it was interesting watching them because they kind of went into desperation mode at the end, took their foot off the brake and started playing the best football was played in like the last 5 minutes of the game by Indiana. They made the score look far more respectable than the entirety of the game was. That was 3/4 of Notre Dame dominating that game. If Indiana, if you take away some of the, that's the first time I saw Cignetti play
conservative,
really almost scared. It's like the play calling was like, I don't want to screw this up. I got us to the playoffs. Now I don't want to screw it up.
Well, it's one of those things, people, in getting to this far and the pressure starts to build, you start to overthink things. What got you there?
You really can. And there were 2 games that I thought were actually going to be the really competitive games. And that was the Notre Dame-Indiana game. I truly thought that would be a really competitive game. And I thought the Ohio State-Tennessee game would be a really competitive game. And the biggest blowout of them all really was Ohio State-Tennessee.
42-17 the final. And that
was a junk touchdown. At the end, Ohio State had pulled all their stars.
You had Paul Feinbaum saying, the committee got it wrong. Everybody's saying, this is a big screw up with Indiana and SMU. And then I think that everybody kind of shut up during the Ohio State-Tennessee game because
which if you listen to Herb Street and Fowler, who were the commentators during that game. But talk about, that was some judicious political word choice when they were doing the commentating, especially at the end of the game, because they knew exactly what the messaging had been up to that point. And I guarantee you, if the score was reversed, let's say Tennessee comes out, lands a few haymakers like Ohio State.
Yeah, it was 21-0 before you could blink.
Exactly. If that had happened instead, I guarantee you they had it all scripted out to discuss how the Big Ten shouldn't be there. Now, here's my take on it. I mean, I'm looking at this and going, and I thought from the beginning, okay, is Alabama a team that if they got in the playoffs would do some damage or at least would be able to really kind of hold their own? More so at least than SMU did.
Yeah.
And I think the answer there is yes. I truly think that. I think they've got – now, I'm not saying SMU is a bad team. I'm not saying they don't deserve to be there. But I think if you go down the roster of both schools, I'm going to look at Alabama and say, yeah, if I want a team going into the playoffs and my choices are Alabama and SMU, I'm taking Alabama. If my choice is Clemson versus Ole Miss, I'm probably going with Ole Miss just because I don't know if Clemson's getting that week in, week out pounding in the ACC like the SEC puts upon themselves. And I'm not trying to be a homer for the SEC. Quite frankly, it drives me nuts when I hear that all season long about how great SEC football is. But you can't tell me the SEC is not a better overall conference than the ACC.
I think it is.
So I do think Alabama probably deserves a spot in the playoffs. I think Ole Miss deserved a spot in the playoffs. Now, what people's argument is that, well, what we ought to do is shrink the playoff down to 18.
But you're still going to have this was going to be my point. It's an imperfect science. You could have 4 teams, we still bitched about 5 and 6. You could have 8 teams, you're going to bitch about 9 and 10. You have 12 teams, you're going to bitch about 13 and 14. You can have 14 teams, you're going to bitch about 15 and 16.
100%. Now, and my argument has always been the complaint and the impact of those last teams out. When you're the 13th, 14th team, if it's a 16-team playoff and you're the 17th, 18th team, the impact, the argument that you have to be in, it's a less impactful argument than it is if you're the 5th or 6th ranked team in the country, if you're the 9th or 10th ranked team in the country. And that's why my argument here isn't, okay, well, you know, yeah, SMU didn't need to be there. Clemson, maybe not. Let's see how Boise looks next week. Do we really need to have these somewhat thought of second-tier teams like Indiana or Tennessee in the playoff? And my argument is yeah, because you're going to have some years where a Tennessee or an Indiana is going to come in and do some damage, where you're going to have one of those low seeds comes in and upsets one of those higher seeds, and people are going to be like, wow, I didn't see that coming.
Well, it was no different. We never thought that a 16 seed would be the number 1 seed in college basketball. Now it's happened twice. The possibility is always there. And with basketball, you're talking about 68 teams. Football, you're talking about 12 teams. You know an upset is going to happen sooner or later.
And so you make a great point about the 16-1 upsets, the 15-2 upsets that you see in the NCAA tournament.
Which are much bigger than a 12 over a 1 in football.
I mean, on paper it is. I'm not sure. I think most basketball teams, I think there's a better shot of on any given day, somebody can upset somebody else. I think that's a higher likelihood in basketball than it is in football.
I could agree with that.
So I'm not sure it's a bigger upset in basketball. I mean, a 16 over 1 or a 15 over 2 is, I agree, mathematically it's a bigger upset than a 9 over an 8 or whatever the seeds were for SMU. But it's the upsets are going to happen. And what you've seen in basketball and part of my thought process here is when you look at transfers in basketball, that's been going, there's been more of a transfer dynamic in basketball, more so and for a longer period of time than there has been in football. I think in football, players have had more of a tendency to stick around. I think you saw less movement for a long time in football than you did in basketball. And so I think now football's catching up to that. In basketball, those big upsets are a little more prone to happen because of that player movement, because of, God, some of the...
Well, hell, basketball, it takes one player. One player can make a difference.
One or two guys can be the difference between that 15 upsetting a 2 in the tournament. And so in football, we're now seeing that player movement. A lot of people are like, I think a lot of people are looking at... It's kind of weird because they look at the portal, they look at NIL and what it's done to football, and they're like, oh, I hate this. I can't stand it. I don't like the impact it's having on the game. But then when it comes to the playoff, people are sitting here going, okay, well, it's like we're going to pretend it hasn't had an impact on parity yet. Okay, how many losses did Georgia have this year?
2.
So that's a 2-loss team. Alabama, who is a bubble playoff team, and people are now saying should have been in the playoffs. Ole Miss, who's a bubble playoff team, people are now saying should have been in the playoff. How many losses did they have?
3.
Those are 3-loss teams. That's parity. That's that's the transfer portal. That's what NIL's done, where all of a sudden we're seeing these teams, and I'm kind of extrapolating a year or two here, because I think right now we're looking at it and people are going, ooh. It's like when you're saying Alabama and Ole Miss should have been in the playoff, the reality is what we're saying is like, okay, there's room for 14 teams here. Do you tell a conference title winner like Clemson, you don't deserve to be in the playoff? Do you tell SMU had what, 2 losses?
2 losses.
So you got to,
and they lost in the conference title game. They had one loss going into the conference title game.
You've got a conference title game loser with a reasonable ranking that makes it in that they don't deserve to be there. So all of a sudden, I'm not looking at this as an argument that we need to shrink the playoff, that these teams don't deserve a spot. I'm looking at this going, okay, there was room for 14 teams here, and there should have been at least 14 teams in this playoff, which if you've got 14, it's stupid not to just be at 16. Now, is the 16 going to upset the 1? Probably not. Is the 15 going to upset the 2? Probably not.
But they could go maybe to the... because there'd be some buys in there. So you could,
well, if you do 16, you really don't do a buy.
Yeah, well, that's true.
You'd have to go 18 or 20 at that point.
I think the top 4 would rather have a buy than expand the playoff. What I did love, whether you...
Like I said, 20 then, boom.
And I would be okay with that. I did like the home field games. I thought that was super cool.
I love the home field. This is where now all of a sudden I'm looking at this and I'm going, eliminate the bowl games.
Just play the whole tournament through the home sites?
So Oregon's the higher seed?
Yep.
All right, you got to go to Oregon again.
Because you got Ohio State and Oregon in the second round. That's going to be the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I want to see Penn State hosting a second round game here.
Well, Penn State actually has to take on Boise State, so it would be Penn State.
That would be at Boise.
Yeah.
All right, great. Let's go to Boise then.
Then you would have Arizona State hosting Texas, or you would have in Georgia hosting Notre Dame.
The home field advantage aspect of this is where all of a sudden getting that first round bye, I think, kind of sucks. Because those teams that got the first round bye are going to the bowl game sites.
Yeah, that's true. They don't get to play at home.
Yeah, screw that shit.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the home team hosting. That had to have been a blast for those schools. That was when you're looking at Ohio State, Notre Dame night game.
Snow.
That was pretty freaking cool.
Even the Ohio State game, I mean, Tennessee put a ton of people in the horseshoe, and they were singing Rocky Top before the game. It was a great college football atmosphere.
See, and that's the thing. I think people look at a playoff and they look at this expanded playoff and they think it takes away from college football. And in my mind, it only adds to it.
Yeah, but again...
And I love the whole... I'm a big... Like, I used to be a traditionalist. I wanted the bowl games to last forever. I did not like the idea of a playoff. And now I'm like, just get rid of the damn bowl games. I want to go full playoff here.
It's interesting because the bowl games that I haven't paid attention to any bowl games to this point.
And
now,
they have been playing.
They have been playing them. Now, of
There's
course,
like one I'm going to watch.
And that would be the Nebraska game, right?
That's it. I mean, and I'm talking about non-playoff bowl games.
Yeah, I mean, I've just totally forgotten about the Gasparilla Bowl and all the other bowl games. The famous
Potatoes Idaho Bowl or whatever. I don't even know if that's...
I'll watch the end of the Duke's Mayo Bowl because the coach is going to get mayo poured on him. I'll watch the Pop-Tarts Bowl because their trophy is now a working toaster. I mean, that's...
Okay, that's kind of fun.
It is.
I knew the Pop-Tarts walking around. That was kind of funny,
But yeah, so I've just totally forgotten about those other bowls. And again, if I was a fan of those teams, you'd probably be interested. Of course, we're going to watch the Pinstripe Bowl. I'm going to watch the Music City Bowl. I'll watch the Pop-Tarts Bowl because Iowa State's in it.
And I'm happy for the bowl games, especially for the teams that get to go, because it'd be a hypocrite for me to say like, well, Nebraska's going to a bowl game. And that's kind of been my bottom line all year. I picked Nebraska to win 7 games during the regular season. I was off by 1. But the bottom line is I wanted to see Nebraska to go to a bowl game and get that extra month of practice, extra amount of work. And this is something where it'd be a little hypocritical of me to like start begging and say I want to eliminate the bowls. I want to eliminate the bowls when it comes to the playoff. Just let them host their home games.
And maybe until the national title game, because the national title game's always been on a neutral site, and I'm okay with that.
And that I'm A-okay with. So, or even, I mean, I would still probably be okay with doing semis and the title game in a bowl. Those bowls get to stay there. They'll rotate 3 of them out of 5. I mean, because I think they was it the Peach Bowl in that mix?
Well, let's see. You've got
Orange Rose, Fiesta.
Boise State's playing Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. Texas playing Arizona State in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Oregon and Ohio State are playing in the Rose Bowl, and Notre Dame and Georgia are playing in the Sugar Bowl.
I don't know why the Peach Bowl. I mean, that was like
money.
That was like a serious second-tier bowl.
It was.
Back when I played. I'm like, why is it? And I get it. Atlanta, great city. It's a great destination spot. Tons of stuff to do. But I'm kind of like, you go Orange, Rose, Fiesta, and Sugar.
Hell, I remember when the Fiesta Bowl was a second-tier bowl until Penn State played somebody for a national... Miami.
After the 86 season.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pete Giftopoulos picking off Testaverde, I think it was.
Look at that memory out of you. You're not suffering dementia at all.
Was it Testaverde?
I'm trying to... 86, probably.
Yeah,
probably.
I think it was Testaverde then. I could even see an argument for the Cotton Bowl. I mean, from a historical standpoint, I'd take Cotton Bowl over Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, Cotton Bowl kind of went to that second-tier bowl, and the Peach Bowl moved above it. And that was kind of weird.
I'm not sure why. So,
of course, if you have not finished up your Christmas shopping, remember that you can still get a pair of Gdefy for your loved one or for yourself, and you can get it at 50% off. Just go to gdefy.com. That's GDEFY.com. Experience the comfort and the pain relief that Gdefy shoes have to offer with the VersoShock technology. Comes with a couple of orthotics along with that, and you're going to be walking better, you're going to be feeling better, and you're going to be saving money. Again, taking 50% off your pair of Gdefy shoes. I'm wearing them. I think Rob wore them in surgery today.
I got mine on right now. I bought a couple pairs for gifts.
Did you?
I did.
My wife suggested that I get somebody a pair of Gdefy, my Secret Santa, and I don't feel comfortable buying shoes for somebody because I'm one of these people who's like, okay, I want you to pick them out. I want you to pick your own style.
This is all for family.
Okay,
that I did it. So I mean, it's I'm doing it. It's immediate family, and hey, here's the thing. Guess what?
What?
If I got the fit a little wrong, they don't like the color, guess what?
Send them back. Got 60 days.
60 days, free returns.
Again, Gdefy.com. That's Gdefy. The promo code DocTalk50. That's DocTalk50 to get 50% off your pair of Gdefy. Of course, the bowl game that we're going to be paying attention to, and the plan right now is because Dr. Rob's got family time planned for the following week. We are planning to go live right after the Pinstripe Bowl. So right after the Pinstripe Bowl, we are going to go live with the Doc Talk Podcast. We're going to be taking your phone calls. We'll talk for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, however long we go, talking about Nebraska's game against Boston College. Of course, weather's going to be an issue. They're going to be playing in Yankee Stadium. I see that Matt Rule's going to have a practice in Central Park, which I think
kind of fun.
It'd be kind of fun. This is an interesting game.
Get the New York experience.
This is an interesting game. Boston College comes in at 7-5. It's a loss to Missouri. It lost to Virginia. It lost to Virginia Tech. It lost to SMU. It lost to SMU by 10 at SMU. Won its last two games, beating North Carolina and beating Pittsburgh, which was probably one of its more impressive wins, 34-23. Bill O'Brien's a hell of a coach, and what he's been able to do in year one is actually, I think, pretty impressive.
Well, and I thought he was a much better college coach than NFL guy. I mean, he did okay for a few years in the NFL, but I don't think it was one of these things where people looked at him as a long-term NFL guy. And I know he came from the NFL. I mean, that's kind of where he cut his teeth to a fair degree. Went and did now didn't O'Brien go and do the Nick Saban sabbatical at Alabama?
He did. He did. You remember he left Penn State, went to the Texans, and then I think ended up at Alabama, and then at Boston College.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised when you look at what he did, because I think year one at Penn State, because he took over right after the Penn State,
the shitstorm at Penn State, the
Sandusky scandal. There we go. Alliteration with the letter S. He went 8-4 his first year, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I think he went 0-2 against Nebraska, and that was a Bo Pelini Nebraska teams. But I mean, that was impressive because I mean, Penn State basically got hit with the equivalent of the death penalty. All players were allowed to transfer. They got a free transfer if they wanted to leave. And so that program literally just got gutted in 1 year's span of time. He hung on to kind of a little core nucleus of players. Had like a couple of really good tight ends, and I think his entire offense was just, I'm going to throw it to those two dudes. And that was the whole offense. But to go 8-4 in the situation in which he was in, I thought was absolutely remarkable. That I thought he should have been, if he wasn't, I thought he should have been coach of the year that year. But really, really solid coach. I thought 7-5 was good. I mean, they came in and, I mean, it was back when Florida State was a top 10 team at the start of the year, but they just hammered Florida State right off the bat in their opening game of the season. And all of a sudden everybody's like, well, shit, Boston College is going to be a pretty good team here. And they did okay. I mean, they beat Duquesne, lost to Missouri, close win over Michigan State. I mean, they barely snuck by Western Kentucky. I mean, you can talk about an impressive win over Pittsburgh. They beat Western Kentucky 21-20. Lost to Virginia Tech. Those were not great teams.
Lost to Louisville. That was a decent team.
Yeah, Louisville wasn't horrible.
Now, I think Dylan Raiola could have a huge day passing against Boston College. This team is not very good against the pass, giving up 246 yards a game through the air.
And it depends. I mean, there's going to be some factors in here. I thought Boston College good against the run, and if they can get Nebraska, if they can get them like one-dimensional, that does worry me a little bit. Their leading rusher, Robichaux, had 736 yards. I mean, that's not a horrible.
They made a quarterback change midway through the season, and you have James Grayson, who's now the starting quarterback. And since he took over the starting job, 80 of 125, 2 picks, 64% completion rate, 901 yards. He has 6 touchdowns, his longest at 53. Grayson's the starting quarterback. He took over for Thomas Castellanos, who went into the transfer portal after he got benched. So new quarterback for Boston College, but he won't be, green by any means. He's played quite a bit of football.
No, and I mean their numbers aren't that different. I mean, Castellanos was about 61, 62%. Grayson was 64, or James rather. Grayson James was 64%. I don't know. That'll be kind of interesting. I thought some of their offense was pretty good. I think the one thing I think Bill O'Brien does is that there's some plays that he runs that are, I think, well-designed plays. And he's looked for a lot of RPO, look for a lot of read option.
Which, if you go back to the Indiana game, that should scare a lot of Nebraska fans.
Yeah, it should. And I think if they run well, and I think Indiana ran it way, way better than what Boston College did. I don't think Boston College has the wide receivers that Indiana did by far. So I think if Nebraska can kind of it's going to be one of these like disciplined defense kind of days where if guys can hold their position, play their assignments, play disciplined defense, I really think they're going to do okay with it because I don't think Boston College has the athletes. When you look at some of the teams Nebraska's played, it's not an Indiana type offense.
Not a heavily penalized team. They have 54 penalties on the season for 520 yards. They excel on fourth down. They're at 50% on fourth down conversion, 43% on third down conversion,
which is okay.
Yeah,
it's
but
not great.
50%, and they've gone for it 32 times on fourth down.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and you're at a 50% clip. That's pretty good. That's probably a lot of fourth and short, but it shows that he's willing to maybe go for it in maybe 4th and 1, 4th and 2.
Which is aggressive play calling. I mean, I think it's fun to watch, but I mean, it's not fun if you're the opponent. So
it's true.
So I probably worry more about, when I talk about disciplined defense, I probably worry more about the fact that you've got a Nebraska team breaking in new defensive coaches. You've lost Tony White. You've lost Terrence Knight, and that worries me a little bit.
Because it's just getting used to a new style, right?
New style. And the other thing is Nebraska, are they going to stick with a 3-3-5 type defense that you saw during the season? But I mean, and obviously Butler was there during the season as the defensive backs coach, and probably helped to some degree with the coordinating a little bit, I would hope. I mean, you would think all of the coaches had a little bit of a say in that. And so I don't think you'd see a huge switch there. The other thing is I mean, you've got the new coaches on staff.
Terry Braden, he's the defensive line coach.
And that's the thing. He's the guy that I look at as kind of a little bit of that's the new kid on the block in my mind, just because you got a guy who's coming in and everybody's like, oh, well, he was an assistant coach with the Chiefs. Okay, well, he wasn't a full assistant coach with the Chiefs. He was an assistant to the D-line coach for the Chiefs. He was not the Chiefs D-line coach. He's an assistant to the D-line coach. So I'm splitting hairs here, and I'm not trying to bag on the guy, but it's not like this guy was a full NFL assistant that we got. The reason he was available is because he wasn't a full assistant coach. He was an assistant to the assistant coach. So I view that as an unproven commodity.
Do assistants need assistants?
I mean, I think in terms of practice, it's a learning position. I mean, he's, in my experience at the NFL level. Now, keep in mind, this was the NFL of 20 plus years ago. So we're talking a little while ago here. Almost 20, actually 25 years ago.
Wow. So you're getting old, dude.
It's been 25 years since I was in the NFL. At that time, the assistant to the assistant coaches were essentially paid interns.
Okay.
So take it with a grain of salt. I don't know how much that's changed, how much that coaching dynamic has changed, how much say in practice, how much responsibility in practice these guys have. So that's kind of interesting. I'll be interested to see. And part of the thing here is he's coming in, and I viewed Terrence Knighton as a really, really good D-line coach. When he came in, dude, Ty Robinson, there was an elevation in his play. Hutmacher, there was an elevation in his play. These guys that he recruited over the last 2 years, they came in and you had impact guys on that defensive line. And I thought it was evident day one in terms of how well Nebraska's D-line played going back to year one under Rule. And I attribute all of that to Terrence Knighton. You saw a big jump up in how that defensive line played. That's why I'm a little worried about Brayton. And I'm not saying the guy can't coach. I'm just saying we don't know.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of track record there because you've got a guy who you can't look at the Chiefs defense and go, well, he's coming from the Chiefs defense. He's obviously good. No, he's an assistant to the assistant.
What do you have to do if you're a brand new assistant and you have 3 weeks to work with a core group of kids? What's the most important thing? Just don't fuck it up?
Kind of. Well, okay. You remember the stories about Holgorsen when he came in as the O coordinator and sat down with Raiola and asked Raiola, hey, what are you comfortable with? What do you want to do? Who are the guys you want to throw the ball to? What are the plays you're comfortable with? And that was kind of a well-publicized thing that Holgorsen did.
He dumbed it down, made it simple, and he set you up for success.
Exactly. He went to the guy and said, what do we need to do to make things work best for you? If I'm Braden, if I'm the new D-line coach, I'm meeting with every one of these defensive linemen individually and saying, all right, what do you think your strengths are? And what do we need to work on here over the next few weeks leading up to this bowl game to make things work best for you? What kind of fronts, what kind of play calls, what kind of stunts, what do you feel is going to work best for us here over the next couple of weeks? That's what I'm doing if I'm the new D-line coach coming in. I'm going to do the exact same thing Holgorsen did with Raiola.
Same with Addison Williams, who's the defensive backs coach?
I would, and I think that's less of a jump because you've got a D coordinator who just spent the season as the defensive backs coach. I think it's less of a change for him. And I think all these guys ought to do that. Yeah, sit down, get to know these guys, figure out what makes them tick, what works for you as an individual player. How do you feel you worked under Coach Butler? What did you feel like you had the most success with? And what are you going to respond to from a coach-player relationship? Ask the guys that. And see what they say and build off of that. It doesn't mean you got to do exactly what the players tell you they want, but it lets you know a little bit how these individuals tick and allows you to come in there. I think that's I don't want to say important because all of these new coaches and these coaching changes are hugely important, especially when you look at what Nebraska's lost in defensive productivity over the last 2 years. But I think for Williams, it's less of a jump than it is for a guy like Terry Brayton. Phil Snow coming in, that's the other one that I think is He's sort of the wild card for me because
he's the associate head coach.
And I'm not sure what that means. I find it interesting.
Justify money?
Maybe. I find it interesting, though, and he's kind of the X factor in my mind, just because now here's a guy who's been a D coordinator like 10 different places. I mean, the guy's always been a D coordinator. Here is an interesting fact that I didn't know until today. He was D coordinator at was it UCLA, I think, when Rule was a D-line coach or an assistant D-line coach at UCLA. Was it UCLA?
Well, he was a defensive coordinator for Baylor and Temple, helped both those programs have turnarounds.
He's been UCLA, Washington, Arizona State, Boise, Eastern Michigan, Temple, and Baylor, as well as Detroit, Carolina, and the Bears in the NFL.
I bet his family loves him. Just moving all the time.
That's a professional coach right there. Which, as bad as the Panthers were under Rule, their defense actually played okay. They actually had a halfway decent defense in those couple of years that Rule was at Carolina. The offense was an absolute dumpster fire, but the defense played pretty well, and that was Phil Snow. He was the D coordinator there. So, I mean, he's been a solid D coordinator. You've got a guy with a long track record, and overall, it's actually been a pretty solid track record. He's the guy who followed Rule through his years at Temple and Baylor. I think that counts for something.
Well, loyalty goes a long way.
Well, and it does. And it's one of those, if you look at the track record of sort of the Rule timeline at his previous college stops, it's like Temple year 1 sucked, year 2 okay, year 3 and 4 were outstanding. Baylor year 1 sucked, year 2 okay, year 3 was outstanding. I mean, I always said that if you looked at what Rule did at Baylor, and I mean, we're at the end of year 2 right now. And one of the things I'd always said was, okay, if you can take Nebraska and in year 3, we lose in the conference title game and then have a 1-score loss in the Sugar Bowl, I'll be happy. Now, granted, this was pre-12-team playoff thought process, but that's what he did at Baylor in year 3. I think he went 11-3, and 2 of his losses were, I think one was an overtime loss to Oklahoma in the Big 12 title game, and then he had an overtime loss to, I believe, Georgia, who was the SEC runner-up in the Sugar Bowl. Okay, that's pretty damn good.
It is.
I'll take that in year 3. But all of a sudden, it's that same coaching staff that he had at Baylor now. All of a sudden, now it's Rule and Phil Snow. Granted, you got Holgorsen as coordinator, which I think is an upgrade.
I would agree with you on that.
I mean, at least over Satterfield, I think it's an upgrade. So I'm kind of Snow's the guy I'm a little excited about. I'm curious to see how he meshes with Butler in terms of having a guy who's now an associate head coach who is essentially a lifetime D coordinator, and you just elevated Butler to D coordinator.
Now, why do you need an associate head coach and there's getting to be so many layers in college football, though.
And there is now, and some of this might be administrative shit that these guys have to deal with, where when you're dealing with NIL and transfer portal and this ever-changing landscape of rules, when you look at an NC2A that is rapidly becoming replaced by the college football playoff. I mean, it's a year ago at this time, and for much of the offseason, we spent a lot of time talking about how there was going to be a CFP division to college football. There's going to be a college football playoff division made up of some of these super conferences.
Still think it's going to happen, by the way.
100%. I do not doubt that in the least. Then you were going to have a D1. Then you were going to have then there was going to be an FCS level.
To be your group of 5.
Yeah. Then there was going to be an FCS level D2, D3. I still think that's going to happen.
I don't disagree with you.
I really do. We saw a new ruling that I think it adds another layer to the portal and
well, it's not I know where you're going with this. So let's just, if you haven't heard, there was a temporary injunction for the Vanderbilt quarterback who played 2 years of college ball, played 2 years of at New Mexico State.
2 years of
junior college football. Played 2 years at New Mexico State. Played 2 years at Vanderbilt. So that's 6 years, right? And he says, "Well, my junior college years shouldn't count." And so his first ruling went against him. He got a temporary injunction in the state of Tennessee. So that's going to go to court here. I'm conflicted on this because I know what he's saying, because hockey, if you go to a Lincoln Stars game, you go to an Omaha Lancers game, you can have 20-year-old hockey players playing junior hockey. You can have high school kids go to a prep school for basketball, and that's not counted against them.
And there's guys that play prep school football. IMG Academy, everybody's heard of IMG.
Yes.
IMG Academy's prep school. They play a prep school season. It's a thing in wrestling as well. I mean, you've got...
Because you can wrestle unattached, and that doesn't count towards your redshirt year, right?
Yeah, and there's actual prep schools, and I'd have to check on Wyoming Seminary, which is a big prep school. It's a prep school in Pennsylvania, and I believe they count as essentially like a prep school would in terms of you could go there for a year or two outside of high school. And I don't know where the age clock starts ticking on the wrestling side of it. But so the prep school thing, and that existed, the whole prep school thing's gone back decades. IMG existed when I was in high school.
So
now, back then it was like tennis and golf, but I mean, the state of Pennsylvania, and it's kind of a northeastern thing. New England, I mean, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, get up into Connecticut. You saw a lot of kids who they would graduate high school.
Worcester Academy.
Yeah, go play a year of prep school football, then go to college.
So are you for the junior college years not counting?
From a fairness standpoint, I don't have a problem with it. And at the same time, when I go back to our conversation when we interviewed Coach Scott Strohmeyer with Iowa Western, which national runner-ups, by the way, hell of a season. He's done just an amazing job there. One of the things he talked about, he said, when you look at like the Last Chance U series, things like that, you would think junior college football would be thriving. And he said it's hard to put together a full season schedule. He said trying to put together a 9 to 11 game regular season schedule is not an easy thing to do, especially when you take into account travel for the junior colleges. I could see something like this essentially kind of rejuvenating junior college football.
Maybe, and just hear me out, because I don't know if more schools makes the product that much better. I think because I saw somebody on your Twitter page say, this is why every JUCO in Nebraska needs to have a football team. And I'm like, well, back up and punt here.
I don't know. I don't know if everybody does. What I would probably say, though, is that if on a national level you at least had, I could see if you had 1 or 2 per state that had football. And I think, because I do think there is room for a system, a developmental system in sports like football, where you've got kids who would have an opportunity to play at a much higher level if they had a couple more years under their belt to develop. And I see that in a lot of sports because, I really see it in wrestling. You definitely see it in football where you see some of these kids who maybe they're a track and basketball kid. And all of a sudden their junior year in high school, they decide, I'm going to give football a try. And all of a sudden everybody realizes here's a kid who could be an NFL caliber tight end who didn't start playing the sport until 11th grade, and they need a year or two of development before they move on to a 4-year school, before they go to a North Dakota State, before they go to an Augustana, before they go to an Arkansas State. They could use another year or two. You go to Iowa Western, you go to Iowa Central, you go to Coffeyville. You go to Snow.
Go to Hutchinson.
You go to Hutchinson.
Go to Independence. You go. There's a number of Iowa used to have a lot of JUCOs, and if I like Ellsworth, I don't even know if Ellsworth, because
Ellsworth used to be legendary.
Didn't Nebraska JV or freshman team used to play like Ellsworth Junior College?
They used to play Snow, Ellsworth, and Coffeyville every year, and then the Air Force JV team.
Because hockey lets junior hockey players play till they're 20, and same with the prep schools. I'm okay with this. I think you have to look at, do they get a redshirt year when they go? There's a lot of things you have to filter through. A lot smarter people. Well, you're smart. I'm not, can figure this out.
Well,
but I'm not opposed to it.
And I do think that, I think the COVID season's going away.
Thank God.
We're finally getting that one's finally going away. I think players should be allowed. I don't think you should get medical red shirt after medical red shirt after medical red shirt. But I think you ought to get at least, I think you get a red shirt year, you get one medical red shirt year, and I don't have a problem if you go to the JUCOs. Now, the other thing is I think there'll be a little bit of a weeding out here because at some point people hit sort of this, okay, at some point I just need to move on in life and go get a job.
And I think by that time you'll know, if you're not contributing at the next level, you're probably not going to contribute, right?
And at the Power 5 level, now it's Power 4, but at the Power 4 level, at the CFP level, because that's what we're talking about. You're going to the 105-man roster. Guess what? They're not going to be the guys who need 6 years to finally develop into that guy. Guess what? You're not going to make it on the 105-man roster.
Where I like it really would be for basketball, because to me, when a junior college player goes to play D1 basketball, it takes a semester, maybe a full year for that kid to really adapt to Division I. Because JUCO basketball and Division I basketball are two different things. You can have the talent, but there's still a different aspect that it takes to get acclimated. So I'm all for it. At the end of the day, these kids are getting paid. If they're not producing, they're going to transfer. They're going to go to FCS. They're going to go to NAI. They're going to go somewhere else and contribute.
Yeah, and baseball's the other sport where you've got baseball.
Good point.
Baseball's got a massive junior college
infrastructure.
Yeah, that's probably one of the sports where the JUCOs shine is baseball.
Yeah. It's just a temporary injunction. And it could become, the law of the land. But it's a start.
But here's the thing: where we've seen meaningful change in college sports, and it may not be meaningful change that you like, because, like I said,
dude,
and I say this: the transfer portal was meaningful change. NIL was meaningful change. That doesn't mean it was good. It doesn't mean it was bad. It doesn't mean you like it or dislike it. But you can't say it didn't have an impact. And that's what I mean by meaningful change.
It's funny that you say all this, because I got into an argument with somebody on Facebook this week about, they were like, college football is ruined. I'm like, how is it ruined? The games are better. They're more exciting. There's more parity. And you don't know who's dominating.
And you will see more of that. And I've had that discussion on Twitter with several people just within the last 2 days, that because the discussion was, and this goes back to we don't need more teams. And why did SMU have to be there? And I'm like, we need 16 to 20 minimum. Let's do it right now. And people are like, no, we're going to see these blowouts in the playoffs. Yeah, you will, but you're going to see more parity coming. And people people keep discounting that, and they don't think it's going to happen. There's a reason Georgia had 2 losses. There's a reason Texas had 2 losses. There's a reason Alabama had 3 losses this year. There's a reason Brian Kelly is kind of on the hot seat at LSU right now. There's this growing parity in the sport that I think we're going to be hitting a point here where I think Oregon was lucky this year to go undefeated.
Oh, 100%.
Ohio State, right now, everybody's looking at Ohio State going, damn, do we really want to play them right now? That's a team that was on a mission last night. That's a 2-loss team. You're going to see a point where I guarantee you I shouldn't say guarantee. That's a comment's going to come back to haunt me. You're going to see a 12-team playoff in 2 years that doesn't have an undefeated team in it.
I don't disagree with that.
I think the era of where you've got a playoff with a couple of undefeated teams, that's going to be more and more rare. And so now, going back, when I was talking about meaningful change in college football, impactful change, good or bad, whether it's a good impact or bad impact, whether you like it or don't like it, where have these changes originated?
In court?
In court. That's where it's happened. And when you look at this junior college ruling, when it comes to 4-year school eligibility, it's going to come from the courts. I think this sticks. I really do. And the reason I say it sticks is because kind of what we've talked about, when you look at the junior national teams in hockey, when you look at prep school sports, it doesn't impact guys at a 4-year institution.
Yeah, because there's no consistent legislation from the NCAA that would say, well, what's the difference?
Exactly. And that's the NC2A effing themselves up.
Which they've done the whole, every step of the way.
They have sent themselves into, it's a double, it's redundancy here, but they're archaically obsolete here in how they've done stuff for decades. And that's why it's been, I don't want to say easy, but that's why it's been relatively easy to come in with ruling after ruling after ruling that has just gutted the NC2A rule book.
If you want to look at an organization that's not agile and where bureaucratic bullshit gets in the way all the time, it's the NCAA. They were never able to adapt to the changing times. What worked in the 1970s isn't going to work today. You have to adapt to the modern times.
Here's the thing. It didn't work well then.
The people just accepted it.
You just accept it. It worked like crap. Yeah, we just accepted it. It was an archaic system then. You just accepted it because that's the way it was. People, the workaround was the brown paper bag filled with shit tons of cash.
Did you see Shane Gillis give Nick Saban shit the other day on College Game Day? That was one of the best things ever.
I like Saban's.
Yeah, he goes, I believe in integrity. And he actually used air quotes. He used integrity in air quotes, saying, I didn't pay a player at Alabama. I developed them, and they got paid in the National Football League.
And I understand.
I call bullshit on that, by the way.
Well, and I think Saban, I look at Saban a lot like how I look at Osborne. I think you had guys who were honest to God trying to do the right thing as best they could in the system that they were given to work with. There's a lot of moving parts within that system, and I guarantee you Saban's sitting there going, I don't want to pay guys. I hope people aren't paying guys. But he's not stupid. He's not naive. He knew there was money flowing.
Absolutely.
But guess what? Sorry, I'm turning to talk to you in emphasis here, and I'm yanking my own headphones out. You can't tell me he didn't know it wasn't happening at Alabama and Tennessee and Florida and LSU and USC and Nebraska and Oklahoma and Ohio State.
Integrity.
We just made shit legal is all. That's all NIL.
It's above board. Well, somewhat above board.
I mean, if I'm SMU, I mean, God forbid SMU ever decides to figure out a way to take the death penalty to court and to sue the NCAA, which, by the way, SMU alum, get your shit in gear legally here if you want to do this, because I don't know what the statute of limitations is. And I don't know if you'll have an NCAA to sue in a few years here. That might be going away.
That's fair. It's just funny because Nick Saban did not like being the butt of Shane Gillis's jokes. And when he called him Alabama Jones because he's wearing the fedora, that was priceless, man. Absolutely priceless. Hey, if you want to do some last-minute Christmas shopping and you don't have time to order shoes, you can also go to Husker Hounds, 2 locations in the Omaha area. Scotty Strunk has got you ready for the holidays. Buy all the Husker gear you need, whether that's for the rest of the basketball season, the upcoming baseball season. Of course, he has football stuff year-round. Husker Hounds, 2 locations in the Omaha area and online at huskerhounds.com.
Which, by the way, I am going to talk to Scott today that I've had 2 people text me today about a top 10 sports program in Lincoln, and they couldn't find gear for it at Husker Hounds.
And that would be bowling?
Wrestling. Dude, bowling gear. Dude, you could have fun with bowling.
You could have a lot of
the way.
The problem with wrestling is, you know, I love wrestling. I'm an Iowa guy. In college, if you're top 3, you're really good. After that, you're okay.
Dude, I'd say if you're top 10, you're really.
Well, I don't know. Top 10. Okay, top 10 ain't beating number 1. Number 10's not beating number 1. Not happening.
No, but
it's Penn State and Iowa right now.
Damn.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're probably right.
Thank you.
Okie State.
Actually, let's be honest. It's Penn State and everybody else right now.
Yeah, but I think when you look at David Taylor at Oklahoma State, you're going to see some changes there. And I think you're going to see all of a sudden there's going to be, it's small scale parity, but in a sport where you've got, I'm going to say 3 to 5 amazing teams. Out of that 5, 2 are really good. You're going to have some growing parity here just because, again, transfer portal, NIL, and all of a sudden Oklahoma State's going to be coming back into the mix again. Already had a great program with John Smith, but I think they're going to take a jump up here with David Taylor.
You know, we talked a lot about lawsuits today. You know, if you have a lawsuit coming up or if you need to file a lawsuit and have some litigation, Connor Orr at the Orr Law Group is the lawyer you need to call. We talked a lot to Connor this week, not about our lawsuits, but about the NCAA lawsuits. But he can help you with your estate planning, your litigation. Give him a call or go online to orlawgrp.com. That's orlawgrp.com. Or you can email Connor at orlawgrp.com for all your legal needs. Wrapping things up, the Nebraska volleyball team got beat in the semifinals. You're talking about they were billed as like the greatest Nebraska volleyball team ever. You can't say that now. You can't.
No, and I don't know if I would have called them the greatest ever.
Pretty good.
I thought they were one of the better teams we've had in recent years in terms of pure talent. Now, the other thing is I look at Penn State, and that was a team that, man, they played good volleyball all year long as well, too. I thought that was one of the few teams that I thought that really worried me going into that late regular season game against Penn State. And then when you hit them in the Final Four, Nebraska had their chances.
They were up 2-0. They were dominating. And they had, I'm going to call it solid leads. You're talking 4-5 point leads in the last 3, in each of the last 3 sets. I hate taking away from Nebraska
It sucked to see him lose 3 in a row like that. On the flip side, that's a good Penn State team. That's a blue-collar team. That's a team that didn't struggle at all. And by the way, I'll also say this. Penn State volleyball is like 1,000% less annoying without Russ Rose as the head coach.
I would agree with you. The crazy thing is we're recording on Sunday. The national championship game we played this afternoon. For the first time ever, a woman head coach will win a national title.
That's pretty damn cool.
I can't believe it's taken this long.
It really has. It's really amazing that it has taken this long.
But, of course, I think we're rooting for Louisville and Danny Busbaum Kelly, who's a former Husker. Well,
here's the thing. Do you root for her in Louisville, or do you root for the Big Ten team?
Oh, I think you root for Louisville.
I don't know. I mean, I look at Big Ten.
You're torn.
I look at Big Ten volleyball the way I look at Big Ten volleyball and Big Ten wrestling the way that I think the SEC views football.
Okay.
They view it as a flagship.
That's fair.
And it's one of these things where it's kind of one of these, I like being able to say, okay, if Nebraska doesn't win it, I want to be able to step back and say, yeah, we didn't win it this year, but guess what? The only team that was able to keep us from winning it was another Big Ten team.
So you're going with the conference?
I may be.
Wow.
I mean, I might be rooting against Nebraska's next head coach by saying that, though, too.
Wonder how long that one's going to take. I do want to try to get John Cook on during our interview series during the offseason because he's changed a lot in the last couple of years. I'd love to sit down and talk to him about just his personality change.
But I think he'd be an interesting guy to talk to. And when you talk about the personality change, it's kind of where he's had this opening up of his personality. I think he's shown himself a little more. I think he's shown himself to be a little bit more of a, I don't know if personable is the right.
He's showing he has a sense of humor.
Yeah. And I think that's something that he has kind of kept under wraps. I don't think anybody ever looked at Terry Pettit and said, here's a laugh a minute, jovial guy. Like,
hell, even when he sat down with us, he was very serious.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, I mean, it's like you can do an interview with John Madden and have you rolling on the floor laughing the whole time. That's not Terry Pettit. But on the flip side, if you sit and talk to him, there's this incredibly humanistic side to Terry Pettit that does come out when you sit and talk with him. Even when he's being very serious, there's a hugely humanistic side to him. We haven't seen that with Cook until really recently. It's an interesting thing to see, and I want to talk to John Cook because I want to talk to the non-humanistic side of John Cook. I want to talk to the analytical guy.
Oh, you'll be geeking out. Rob will be geeking out. All right, do you expect a high-scoring Pinstripe Bowl game?
Actually, I do. I think this is going to be an interesting game, and I do expect to see some scoring out of this.
Don't forget, after the Pinstripe, I'm going to hold you to this. We're going to go live right after the Pinstripe Bowl game, so we'll be live on YouTube, taking your phone calls. We'll go for as long as you guys want to talk. It'll be our last podcast of the 2024 year. Then we'll start all over again in 2025 with our interview series. So, again, give this channel a subscription. Just hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and if you heard anything that Dr. Rob and I said, go ahead and leave your comments. For Owen Justice, for Dr. Rob Zadiska, I'm Travis Justice. We will talk to you Saturday after the Pinstripe Bowl game right here on the Doc Talk Podcast.